right, so that I don't have to do anything. Walter, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Anyway, we just finished the screening, and how did everybody like it? There were a few laughs, and there were a few "oh my gods" and a few "Jesus, I can't do that," and I think we saw a little agony in your face during the movie. And but anyway, it was quite a learning experience, and I'm sure it was a lot of fun for you to take some of that muscle memory and go back in time and do it again.
Yeah, I mean the muscle memory came back instantly. And the exhaustion at the end of every day set in instantly. It compared to what we do now, it was like blacksmithing. You are on your feet, you're pounding away at molecules of iron and silver nitrate and all kinds of stuff. So it's just the physicality of it, which is what we wanted to bring out in making the film, definitely was there. And, we shot for 10 days using 2 cameras and an iPhone to get in close. And at the end of the 10th day, as you can tell, I said, I'm glad I experienced this, and I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore.
I mean, at your peak using the Moviola, how fast were you on that machine?
Fast enough, given how much film was being shot, which was less, because film was expensive, and you only printed the selected takes. So on Fred Zinnemann's Julia, our work print was 180,000 35 millimeter feet, which is roughly 36 hours of material. And the first assembly was 2 hours and 45 minutes. They shot for 16 weeks on that film. And my assembly was done at the end of January, and the film was locked in April.
Now, for the man who wrote In the Blink of an Eye, can you see the eyes on the little Moviola screen?
Well, that's the trick, is that you have to look at something about the size of a 3x5 index card, and it's not very bright, and it's flickering, and it's noisy, and so you have to pay extra attention to the eyes. The eyes have it, and you also have to develop what a kind of mental jujitsu, where you're looking at this small screen, and yet I'm imagining as I do that I'm standing in the back of a theater, and there are 300 people between me and the screen, and that's how when I'm watching the stuff on the Moviola, but mentally I'm thinking I'm in the back of a theater watching this screen. So the real danger is that with something so small, you tend to look at it rather than looking into it. And that's the whole experience of making a motion picture that works on the big screen, is that the audience is not looking at the screen, they're looking into the screen. And the screen is big, and their eyes are moving from one side of the screen to the other, whereas on a 3x5 index card, you see the whole thing in an instant. So you have to get rid of that kind of mentality.
When I first watched the movie, I watched it on my computer, and that was the first question I had: is the resolution of the screen. How do you see the eyes? It was a little bit easier when you're looking at it on a 20-foot screen. That it was a little bit clearer, but it's still. I know the early Avids, the resolution was not very good.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
AVR4.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that much difference until much later, right?
Yeah. The real watershed happened around 2005, when,
Really?
because up until that point, the it was what I call the gas electric phase, where we're shooting on film, we're editing digitally, but we're conforming the 35 millimeter work print as we go, because up until 2005, the output of any of the digital machines wasn't up to showing to an audience. The resolution just wasn't that good, but that changed around 2005.
I'm going to start with that section over there. Who's got a question? Yes, you in the mask.
I'm sorry. I'm an editor myself. I just found a moviola sitting in the middle of nowhere in Burbank and brought it home, and it works. The last time I touched a moviola was in college, and when I'm watching this, the left side is where the mag is where the analog, where you hear the sound, but the right side doesn't. Does the right side have audio as well if you want to get like nothing? Okay, because the girlfriend bought me a bunch of 16 millimeter trailers, and I'm ready to put those on. So there'll be no sound on that. That has to be a separate thing. Yeah,
it does. This is the moviola. Classic moviola is a double system machine. So the image only on the right and sound only on the left. The moviola that I was using in this film was equipped to run both magnetic and optical sound. But you can't. I mean, that's the other problem with that I talk about in the film, which is that the image is going intermittently. It's jerking to a stop, and the sound has to run continuously. So that's the problem.
I saw the tip of like that wheel on the left there to slow it down with your hand.
I
was learning that like the film's going to snap if I don't do
something.
All right, that's my and parts to find parts for it is impossible.
It's hard.
But yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Question in the middle. In the middle section. Your hand was up first. You, sir, right in the front row.
Hi, Walter. I really enjoyed the film. Just had a question about how we've gone to the new digital systems and how there's obviously great advantages that have come with that, convenience and flexibility. I'm just wondering if you could kind of maybe comment on how the older way of editing, maybe there was some advantages in terms of maybe the simplicity of or the purity of maybe just the image and in your head, kind of building in your head. Were there some things that you maybe thought maybe were an advantage of those times compared to now? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, basically the answer is no. But I have to say that I'm glad I've been editing film for 60 years, started in 1965, and 30 years analog and 30 years digital. So I'm split pretty much right down the middle. So I'm glad that I experienced the analog, because it did impress upon you the need to organize things really well and to think about things in advance and to take notes. That kind of discipline. If you use that in digital systems, it can only help. The thing about digital systems is that you can just kind of dive in and, as they say, ride bareback without looking at all the dailies. You just sort of dive in and see what happens. And if the film is short enough and simple enough, that works. If it gets really complicated with a lot of footage. The documentary Coup 53 that I edited had 532 hours of material. So the discipline of being organized and taking notes helps a lot.
This section, Michael, comments.
Hi, Walter. Great film.
Thank you.
As someone who's admired your editing career for many years, you've always taken chances with new technology in the edit bay or in the edit suite. What's your opinion on utilizing AI in the editing room?
I don't, as Chairman Mao said, it's too early to tell. I just haven't done enough. I've got my eye on it, but I haven't used it other than text AI, but I haven't gone into anything. But obviously it's already being used, and that's only going to accelerate. And hold on to your hats. guys, because it's going to be another big. It's like the coming of sound in a sense. It will turn a lot of the procedures upside down.
Thank you.
Going back to the other section over there. Yes, sir. You and the no hair.
Walter, it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you here. There was a scene in the film where the director, the Turner director, didn't agree with one of your choices. And I'm
Right.
sure that a lot of the editors in this room has probably been in a situation where you come up with this long, lot of thought, a lot of notes put into your work, and then a director or a producer or someone comes along and inserts their opinion. And so one of the questions that, you know, came to mind is, in your career, how do you know when you're done, and how do you navigate when you have so many voices coming at you?
Yeah, it comes with the territory. It's part of the portfolio of being a film editor. It's not your work, you know. It's somebody else wrote it, and somebody else directed it, and you're the editor. It's the final version of the screenplay, let's say. So there is a certain amount of writing going on in all of your choices. My rule of thumb for places where there's a disagreement between you, the editor, and the director is another rule of three. So if you get an idea at 3 o'clock in the morning and you come in and get excited and say, what if we did this, you know, X, Y, Z, and the director says no, then you maybe explain a little what you're thinking, but if the director still says no, then you shut up and keep going. But if it's really something that you think is important, find another opportunity to revisit that idea. And maybe a week later you say, well, now that we've cut the exposition scene out of the beginning, you know, we could just do something like this. And you're greeted with another no. Still, if it's that important, don't let it go and try a third time. But if the answer is still, if you get 3 no's, then let it go. You may find a month later, the director may say, I just had a great idea. What if we did X, Y, Z? And then you say, what a great idea. Don't revisit don't reveal the secret of this. But you don't want to become a pain in the ass, basically. If you keep hammering away at something, the director is going to drive to work and say, oh, I don't want to go to work today because that crazy Walter is going to tell me about that stupid idea of his. So let it go. But if you, on the other hand, it's your job, your duty to really stick up for some idea, but don't beat it to death, basically.
Middle section. Anybody in the middle? Anybody way back there, the dark hair and the beard?
Hey, Walter.
Hi.
The Conversation is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Thank you.
I'm just incredibly interested in the film. You talk about taking notes and then sitting alone and like closing your eyes and thinking about it.
Right.
The Conversation is a film that feels like incredibly thought through, sound, music, the way the story is told, and it feels like something that couldn't have been all there on the script. I just want to know about your process in putting that film together. Was that difficult? Was that easy? Was that trial and error?
There are 2 chapters in my upcoming book on that exact topic. So, but I'll thumbnail it for you, which is Francis stopped shooting The Conversation with 78 scenes unshot. And this is a screenplay, which was 157 pages long, had 397 scenes. So a good, whatever the math is, you know, a good 1/5 of the film was not shot. And he went off to work on Godfather II and left us, me and Richard Chu, my associate editor, And he said, well, I don't know, just put it all together the best way you can, and we'll see if that hole is really a hole. And if it is, then we'll ask Paramount for another couple of days shooting and fix it. And so all that summer, when after the assembly, when we were reducing a 4.5 hour first assembly down ultimately to under 2 hours, that was how do we deal with this absence? In the end, it came down to one shot. The scene in the film where Harry wakes up and Meredith, is the girl he slept with, is gone. It's 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and he goes over to his bench and he discovers that the tapes are gone, that she came and stole the tapes. That shot is a new shot because in the screenplay and on the first and on film, she stole the plans for his new microphone. So she and Bernie, she worked for Bernie, and they had nothing to do with the big story. And so by making her steal the tapes, that collected her into the whole story, and that allowed these 78 other scenes to not be missed.
Wow. Okay, so we're in this section, right? Yes, you've got the blonde.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Nina. I'm a huge fan, so.
Thank you.
But you sort of touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious to know how your process has evolved from film to digital over your span of career. If you've done, obviously you still kind of try to keep a paper cut running before you start really doing any editing, but has that really changed? How has that process evolved for you? And how different is it now than it was on film?
Well, pretty much on film, there were no computers in the period, those first 30 years. So I was working with index cards, as you see in this film. And once computers started to come into the editing room, I started to use a computerized database on Unbearable Lightness of Being, which is mid-'80s, and then on Ghost at the end of the '80s. And that's the big shift in terms of my records. I would sit there with a laptop open during dailies, and I would just start writing down what I thought about each shot. And then that would accumulate over time what the director thought of the shot, if the director had any opinion, and what I thought later when I not only look at the dailies, but then when I'm getting ready to edit a scene, I would relook at everything for that scene, because as you know, dailies is a mishmash of stuff. It can have material from whatever they shot the day before, which could be for 3 or 4 different scenes. So I would just collate everything, take notes, and then go through those notes with a highlighter saying, oh, this was good, this was good, this was good, this was good, this was bad, and for some reason I would make that green. I would highlight it with green. And then putting the first assembly together, I would have all of those notes on my table and just try to go from orange to orange in the most interesting way possible. So that's basically what it did. I mean, the other big change is that editing, as you saw, editing mechanically, you were lucky to be able to have 2 soundtracks at the same time. So with digital, suddenly we had 10, and then 20, and then 50, and then 99, and then infinite. So the plethora of all of that was a big shift in terms of the focus when we're editing, because now the editor is more and more responsible for adding the music and the necessary sound effects, not all the Foley stuff, but interesting sounds that have helped to tell the story.
And are you considering that when you're doing your, I'm sorry, I know you said no follow-ups, but are you considering the sound and the music when you're doing your paper cut as well?
In a sort of metaphorical sense. I'm imagining it, but not it only gets specific when I'm doing the assembly. But yeah, if I think this could have music, I start to think about the assembly in terms of what music might go with it. You bet.
Mike, this guy has questions.
All right. Yeah, you pick them now.
Well, my question to you is, as we're, transitioning and welcoming AI technology into the editing room, what would be the warning signs that you would give the industry? Because when you transition from to a digital, I'm sure a lot of things changed for you in the editing room, good and bad. So like, what would you tell the next generation of editors to embrace and not forget about as we transition to using more AI technology in the editing room? And just your thoughts on this.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, it's an unknown beast, AI, at the moment. It's emerging from its lair, and is it going to gobble us up? Are our first assemblies going to be done by AI? That's a real question. In terms of things to watch out for, based on my digital experience, the thing I had to overcome with digital was how to keep stuff, because it was totally random access. Anything that was labeled good tended to get used, and anything that was labeled bad tended to be forgotten. So I had to figure out ways to keep material from sinking into the ooze, so to speak. Something that you thought was good when you saw it in dailies might actually, a month later, 2 months later, a year later, might actually be very useful. But because there's so much stuff, and because you said it was no good, you might have forgotten about it. So what I wound up doing was two things. One of them was, after screening of the dailies, I would frame capture a representative series of frames from every setup and print them out and put them up on foam core boards. So when I was editing a scene, I was looking at still images from every single shot that kind of would keep my mind remembering, oh yeah, that shot, that could be useful now. And the other thing was to build what I called chem rolls, which is, rather than just the individual clips, put everything, good and not so good, from a scene together into just one long string, that at any point you could put that up and just kind of scroll through it very quickly, letting your eyes relax and just look at it. Oh yeah, that we can use that, to keep it from being forgotten.
Back here, Mike.
Okay.
That's the subject of the second half of In the Blink of an Eye, or is that the answer to your exact question, which is what should we not forget about the mechanical systems?
Hello, Walter. My name is Forrest. I'm a sound editor myself, and I studied in Austria and Europe. And one of the classes there was sound and film. And you were the prime example for sound and film with Apocalypse Now. So I wanted to tell you that you're kind of famous over there too.
All right. Excellent.
So my question to you is, how do you navigate the terrain between being a sound editor and being a picture editor? Since I heard that, specialization is key in Hollywood. I'm interested in how you navigate through this.
Yeah. It's this all became much easier with digital, but I was doing it long before on Conversation, obviously, which was 53 years ago. Thank God the brain is split in half. There's a left and a right, and the right side, or one of them, tends to specialize in image. The other one tends to specialize in sound. And so it's a question of balancing those and telling which side of the brain you want to concentrate on now, and then telling that side to shut up while you think about things from the other side. So, but actually during the assembly, I'm just thinking of the overall soundtrack and key sound moments. And if possible, I will sketch those out in sound in just exactly like a roughly sketch it out, get the idea here. And don't get dragged, as I said earlier, don't get dragged down into thinking about Foley or, any of the fine detail stuff. And then it's all a question of time. And because schedules are compressed, there has to now be a handoff of the edit to the sound designer, sound supervisor as soon as possible. And then it's a three-legged race between you, the editor, picture editor, and the sound designer. And they are hopefully taking your indications that you have, kind of the trail of breadcrumbs of sound that you have left, and amplifying that and coming up with new great ideas that are original with them. But my experience emotionally is after the film is getting close to lock, thinking, well, now we have to really start thinking about sound. And my initial feeling is always, well, there's almost nothing to do, because I'm so dominated by the visual side of things. And it takes about 3 or 4 days for my brain to really open up and start thinking laterally. If you can think of vision as coming at you directly and sound as coming at you horizontally to the picture, kind of like a cross like that. And that takes time to unwind your brain to really start thinking creatively about sound in detail.
This side of the middle section, I want you guys, anybody over here in this side? Yeah, you just raise your hand. Rose, you want to give them the mic?
Hello, I'm Jeff, and sometimes editor, usually more producer or shooter.
Yes.
Reason I'm not an editor, I love the fact that you started by comparing it to a hammer and an anvil, because the first and last project I did on a moviola was a final project in college. And it was after 70 hours, it was the first time I ever had a drink at the age of 22 because I needed one. And I also learned in that project how to get as little sleep as possible when you were up against a 70-hour deadline. And luckily, the editing floor was hardwood, and so it was the perfect wood to lay down on and maybe not sleep for more than 45 minutes and get back up and keep editing. And I marvel at feature editors, especially those who can do the work that you do and the quality that you do, to have the stamina to get through something as big as a feature and it still be good. And can you share any tips or anything you have for longevity within a project and staying fresh and vigorous?
Drink water.
Yeah.
Change your socks, Michael.
Right. I mean, you put your finger on it, which is that traditionally alcohol is or was a problem back in the old days, just because of exactly what you're talking about. Not my problem, but it endemically in the craft, it was something to watch out for because of the relentlessness of it. I mean, the bottom line is you have to be suited to this work. And I gravitated toward it immediately because of just something about my personality that being locked in a room for 14 hours a day didn't drive me completely crazy. I try to get as much exercise, physical exercise as possible. Walking to work is important. So I would, if I was living close to work, that was fine. If not, I would drive and leave the car about a mile away from, and walk that last mile. And take breaks. If you get stuck on something, switch to another scene. Don't try to pound relentlessly at something. There's always something to do in some other area of the film. And then when you come back to the scene that's giving you a problem, it miraculously often the answer will be right obvious to you. It'll be staring you in the face. That's about it.
Great. Thank you. And there's a fine line between the endurance you have and determination and a professional athlete. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Early Avid systems were like over $100,000. How much was a Moviola machine?
Expensive. They in the mid 60s, they cost basically what a car would cost.
Really?
So $35,000, something along that line. So, could you buy one? Maybe. Could you buy one and then rent it back to the production? Yes, a lot of editors did that. They amortized the cost of that over 10 years or something. But remember that 10 minutes of film back then, 60 years ago, cost $100. So just work print, 10 minutes of work print was $100 to get it back from the lab. Splicing tape was $10 a roll. Splicers themselves cost $250 each back then. That's $2,000 today. So we're living in paradise, comparatively speaking, because of how those costs have simply evaporated. We have other costs now, but the basic costs have vanished.
Post-production is not cheaper though today than it was.
No, because it's that work expands to fill the area available.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right, with this section over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Walter. Thank you so much for doing this, and it's a marvelous film. It struck as I'm sure it did many. The physicality of it, as you said, is just so striking. The back and forth and all the lifting and splicing and placing and precision. And for me as an editor now, one of the things I love is being able to extremely quickly go back over take after take after take, just to try things and experiment and like, oh, this didn't look very good. How about in take 3? Try that, and it's quick and it's almost as fast as you can think of it. And so my question is, in the days before digital, could you have a chance? Was there even a chance of working as smoothly or as nimbly as we might be able to today, or was it just simply not physically possible given the limitations and the strain of just putting stuff in place? And did you have to do so, like the idea of having to do so much of that in your head, or based on the printed takes, seems terrifying to me. Speaking from 2025.
Yeah, no, it basically you had to do a lot more in your head. When I was editing the beginning of Apocalypse Now, all of those 3-level dissolves, I was working on a chem, then the horizontal, and so I outfitted with 3 screens, and then I built a roll for each screen with leader in between, and then I would kind of sit back and watch it and try to imagine where the dissolves would happen. So it was all up in the head. There were advances with video tap material. When that came on in the early 80s, that was a huge leap, because now we editors could say, just give me the video tapes from day 12. And now you could quickly scan through everything that was shot that day without going back into the film. And I did that a lot on Return to Oz, which was 1984. We were editing. But we had a video tap, and a lot of the time, once we had a first assembly, then I went through all of the video tapes, U-matics, and said, ooh, that take, which was not printed, is actually very good now for the way we have it. And so I would ask that take to be printed up. But everything was, it was like a Rube Goldberg machine, as you saw. Everything had to be articulated separately. It wasn't this kind of quick as you can think it world that we live in now.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the other side.
Back here.
Hey, Walter. I believe you worked on Captain EO. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering, with the 3D ride film, are there any lessons that you took from that out to your feature film work after that?
I never worked on a 3D film after that, and that was two 70-millimeter cameras. It was shot with two 70-millimeter cameras, so you could change the interocular and you could change the angle of them during shooting. Once it was shot, obviously you couldn't change anything. When we were editing that, I would be editing only one of the eyes in 35 millimeter. So we shot 70, but we reduced it to 35, and it was 70 millimeter, 30 frames per second, reduced to 35 millimeter, 24 frames a second. And that was what I was working with. But we had racks of left eye and right eye identical. And I would be using the left eye to edit. And then on every Friday, we would conform what I had done using and add the right eye to it. And then we would put on the glasses, go to the projection, and watch what we had done in 3D. And what I was fascinated with was that when Michael would do a moonwalk or any horizontal movement, what looked smooth in 2D looked jerky in 3D. And I thought, what the hell? Is there something wrong with the projector? Are these not aligned properly? No, everything is fine. And what it turned out to be eventually was what drove Peter Jackson to shoot The Hobbit at 24, which is, in 3D, your brain is paying a huge amount of attention to the edges of things because it has to align everything up to make the illusion happen. Once that kind of horsepower, mental horsepower, is fixating on edges, you start to see the jitteriness that's there all the time. But in 2D, the brain isn't paying attention to the edges of things so much, and so everything seems smooth. It is actually jerking. It just, under most circumstances, you just forget. Your brain says, I give it a pass. But in 3D, you don't get a pass. And that's why high frame rates came in 3D, which was to eliminate that jerkiness. And the latest iteration is what James Cameron did in the Avatar 2, which is variable frame rates during projection, so that an ordinary dialogue scene would be at 24 frames a second, and then as soon as action hit, it would immediately kick into 48.
Thanks.
Middle section, I think, right?
Hello, my name's Austin. Nice to meet you, Mr. Murch.
Thank you.
So clearly you've written about editing before, and I have struggled a lot to find books on editing. Do you have any required reading that you consider that editors need to read other than your upcoming book?
Read my upcoming book.
That's at the top of the list.
Yeah, no, Steve Holfish's books are great, I think, because the Art of the Cut is organized around topics, and you get a paragraph from different editors talking about how they deal with deadlines, how they deal with the first assembly. And that gives you a kind of a dimensionality to it. You're not just listening to one editor talk about these things. You're thinking about that topic, but hearing 15 different voices talking about different approaches to that topic, which will help you come up with your own solution.
Steve Hullfish's Art of the Cut. It comes
Art of the
out
Cut.
almost every week. So with a new editor, and it's required reading for everyone. Okay, this side of the middle section.
Hello, my name's Jada. You mentioned in the film we just watched that you value the first impression you get whenever you watch a shot, and you actually write it down on a flashcard. And so I'm curious how important that is to you later in the actual editing process, and if you've ever picked a shot over another because of the first impression notes that you wrote on those flashcards.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, you can, when you watch dailies, okay, here's what they shot yesterday, and you're sitting there watching it, you can think of every take that you come. Okay, here's setup 27, take 3, followed by take 4, followed by take 8. You can think of each of those takes, think of it as a casting session. Each of those takes is like an actor saying, how about me? I can do this. And so what's important is to seize as nimbly as you can the characteristics of that shot, as absurd as it seems at the time. In other words, you're looking at a take, and for some reason, you don't question it, but for some reason you think, he looks like a banana. Write down banana, and that becomes the banana shot, which allows you to access it months later in your mind. Maybe we could use the banana shot. And for every shot, try to get these little quirky interactions between the shot and your first vision of it. That's a technique that actors use in casting sessions, is to wear some kind of strange hat, or put their glasses on upside down, or Robin Williams sit upside down when he was, in the casting for Mork. Who's that upside down guy? He was pretty good. Whereas if he sat normally, I'm sure he would have gotten the job anyway. But it's little quirky things that can help you to remember the vast amount of material that you have to go through.
Way back here.
So I was just really interested in, well, first of all, what a great film. I was just fascinated by all of it. I think the most contact I've had with any of the technology in it is like a Steam back at my school. So it was really interesting seeing like the whole process of everything. And it kind of made me realize how much I wasn't thinking about sound whenever you're like working on all that. And we've had a couple of sound questions, and I was just kind of wondering, because I don't really like hearing that you're lucky to have like 2 soundtracks sometimes. Like I was just kind of wondering the intricacy of sound and like how that would work for you. Like what were the limits, or like you kind of went over how you thought about it or some assemblies and all that.
Yeah. I mean, I was a sound editor before I was a picture editor. As a teenager, I did a lot of experimenting with early tape recorders. So my brain was already saturated with sound when I became a picture editor. And luckily, the first film that I edited was The Conversation, which is all about a sound recordist. So the topic met my own personality, and so there was a nice fit there, putting those things together. I think the one thing to keep in mind is that the only time most of the time, the audience is not aware consciously of what the sound is doing. The only time it almost raises to the surface is when a scene is ending and you cut from one scene to another. What is the texture of the sound of the first scene, and what is the texture of the sound in the second scene? Basically the room tone, or the wind, or the traffic, or the jangly metal sound or something. And in your mind in advance, think of how you would like that transition to be, and think of it in terms of fabric. So in basically the sound in scene A, I want to have a velvety feel. So think of any sounds that you can come up with which have a velvet quality to them, whatever that might be. And then the next scene, I want rust. I want this to be a rusty scene. So it's like rough tweed or something. So now think of, put your mind into tweed mode and think of sounds that have that kind of gnarly, rough kind of quality, and make the most of it at that transition point when one shot cuts to the first shot of the next scene. That's where the audience will grab hold of a difference in sound. In the middle of a scene, they're not thinking consciously. It's affecting them, but they're not thinking consciously of what the sound is doing, which is a great advantage to us because we have cover, we have camouflage, and we can do things without the audience being aware of what we're doing.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
You got one in the middle?
Right here.
Hi, Walter. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm Greg Vinoy from USC Cinema.
Hello, Greg.
I was a key technologist there all through the transition from the chems and flatbeds to
yeah. Wow.
And I had wondered in this, you showed how it was difficult to assemble a lot of the equipment. Had you reached out to USC Cinema?
Howard Berry, the producer, did all of the assembly. So I just had left it to him. I was working on another film at the time and writing the book that is soon to come out. So I left all of those decisions to him, and he was able to source a lot of it, as you see in the film, from London, but Christie's in Burbank was a big that we couldn't have made the film without the fact that Christie's somehow had 10 rolls of virgin magnetic 35 millimeter sound, and that's what we wound up using.
Fantastic. It was wonderful to see all the equipment back up and running.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the main reasons for making the film, is that if we waited another 15 years, not only would I probably be gone, but the equipment would be more and more difficult to assemble. Not so much maybe the moviolas, they'll be around as curiosities, but things like, the heat sensitive tape for the Acme, that was really hard to get.
Like you, I appreciated all the technology and wanted it to continue like historically. So at the end of the active use, we took like a couple 8-plate chems, rewind benches and things like that, and put them into our archives to make sure that was there.
Oh, good.
Plus we had boxes of Band-Aids when the students used to cut themselves on the.
Yeah. We were, and when we were shooting this film, we were hoping for the moment of that happens on every film, which is first blood. And
Exactly.
what we would do at the beginning of every film, we would have a handkerchief thumbtacked to the bulletin board. And the first time anybody cut themselves, either on a razor blade or on a whirring split reel or whatever, they would shout "first blood," and then the handkerchief would come down. It would soak up the blood, and then that would be framed and put on the wall with the date and the feeling. This is, watch out. This is a dangerous occupation.
Absolutely.
Okay, this side of the fella on the long hair.
Hi, Walter. First off, I have to say much thanks for the rule of 6. I've used that a lot of times. Yeah. So I guess one thought that I was having with our last LACPUG meeting into mind is what instance would you say your note cards got extra nuts? So with the last LACPUG meeting, we had the editor of Gladiator 2 come, and he was talking about how a single scene was crafted from 12 cameras.
Yeah.
And I guess I was just wondering how you came up with like an efficient system for like an extra crazy paper cut.
It's when you get backed into the corner, you have to find a way out. We're all potential Houdinis trapped, with a chain around us, and we have to find ways to get out of it. There are many examples of that. I'm thinking there was a scene in English Patient where a whole scene that Michael Ondaatje, the author, felt was really important, was shot, and it was a good scene, but it tended to make the film veer off in a direction that was not helpful because the film had to be coming to an end, and it was asking you to think about things outside of what you'd been looking at. It was Kip getting upset at the dropping of the atomic bomb, and the whole thing about white man and racial and everything was the center of that scene. And so we dropped it, but then the problem was that Kip was a different person on the other side of that scene. What's going on? Hannah, Juliette Binoche, is banging on the door. Tell me, what's wrong? What's wrong? And we had a week or so thinking, what can we do? Do we have to put that scene back? And in the end, it was Edie Blyman, my assistant, who said, enigmatically, she said, "Okay, Chief," she called me Chief. "Okay, Chief, remember, a bomb is a bomb." And I thought, well, a bomb? What's she saying? And then I realized she was talking about the booby trap bomb that kills Hardy, Kip's assistant. And so, okay, that scene, we have to move it, and we have to do lots of other things, including digitally erasing Kip from a number of scenes. But that allowed the death of Hardy by a booby trap was this thing that the audience understands why Kip is a different person now because his friend was just killed. So it's all that kind of lateral thinking. And so listen to your assistants because there's lots of good ideas circulating out there.
Yeah, on that note, Walter, we have to leave. And
all right.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody here for taking the time.
Sure, my pleasure. Yep.